Obviously, when we are trying to get item, we need to make sure, for example, if the user ID we get actually exists, if it's a valid one. For example, I'll just write a comment, make sure the user ID is valid and exists in our database, and then make sure if the user is valid, then we will allow the user to save, otherwise we can just do something about it. In order to do that, let's just use a help from state. So we're going to constructor and use props, and from props we're going to just pass the props there, if I can type props properly, and then we are going to say this dot state. What do we need? Oh, sorry, it's not a function, we just need to pass an object. So we're going to say auth user ID. It will be at the moment nothing. We need to bring a few things to our component. We're going to component did mount, and also we need component will on mount, and in here we're going to say this dot is mounted equals false, and here we are going to say exactly opposite, this time true. And we have this local storage user, so let's go and see if this user actually exists. So I'm going to say const local storage user ID, it is this one, and then we are going to use this function to make sure if that user actually exists. The value will be local storage user ID, or user, let's just call it in a more meaningful way, user ID from local storage, very big name, but. And also, what else do we need? We need ID and collection name, so I'm going there, and the collection name will be users. It will return an object found user, and if it doesn't find the user, it will return empty object. So we need to make sure that found user is not empty. So in order to make sure if the user is not empty, we need to write a function. So quickly, I'm going to minimize everything, and then I'm going to paste the function. So is object empty? It's going to check two things. It's going to convert the object to array and then check the length. If the length is 0, obviously the object is empty, and also make sure the type of this object is actually object. So first thing, make sure it's object, and then change it to convert it to array, and then see if the length is 0. If yes, then that one is going to be empty. Let's just rename it to is empty for make it more convenient. So copy, and I need to export it as well. I go to block create, we need to import it. So we have is empty, and here we are going to say if it is not empty, if not is empty, there we go. If it is empty, basically we are not going to do anything. We're not going to set and change this one. But if it is not empty, now we can check if it's actually the same as the one which is authenticated, the UID actually. So in order to do that one, we are going to use Then if it is not empty, we're going to use auth. It's going to return a user, and from that user we're going to just write if there is a user. So there we have found user. We can call this one auth user. So if there is an auth user, again, if it is not, for example, else, we really don't need to do anything if we don't have authenticated user. If we have authenticated user, if we can find that user in our database, then we're going to do something. So if there is an authenticated user, we need to check a few things. The authenticated user dot UID is equal to found user dot UID. And if these two are the same, now we can go and update the state. So I'm going to say set state. Set state, we're just going to pass the auth user ID, or we can say, I don't know, it's valid or something like that. We don't really need to do anything specific in this case. And if these two are the same, well, we can just easily say valid user by default is false, and then we can just make it true. So if these two are the same, means, well, we found the user from the local storage, and also the user from local storage has the same UID as the one which we checked from Firestore. So everything should be fine, except we are using this .isMounted. Well, let's just put it quickly here. And this one is mounted. Add this one. So let's see, what do we have? Let's just refresh. And it is saying the first argument to be a type of non-empty string. So there must be something wrong. Yes, because we have ID. I'm passing value. So let's just change it to ID. There we go. Everything's fine. And if everything is fine, we should be able to just set state. Let me check if they are both the same. I'm going to blog create. And yes, the user is valid. Let's change the application user ID. If you see there is an L, I'm going to remove it. Go back here, go to React, and refresh the page. So blog create, that's false, obviously, because we have changed it. And I'll just go back there and put the L back. And so going to refresh, go back home, go back here, and then look for the blog create blog, if I can type properly. There we go. We have the valid user. Now that we have the valid user, we can just go to the save and say if this dot state dot valid user, then we are happy to let you save other things. Otherwise, well, we can say show a model, but in this case we're going to say console.log user is not valid. So let's test it. We're going to save it, and everything works. Voila! Now let's go to the blog and go to application. For some reason, let's just change this one, for example. I'm going to just come off and refresh. We are still logged in. Now let's try to save it. Let's go to console, press save. User is not valid. That's good, because now we can't save it because the user is not valid. And if I go back to applications and then fix that one, we should be able to save it after refresh. So let's just refresh the page. Another one again, another one, another one again, intro and content. We're going to save it. It is working. So that's good for this video. In order to make sure that all of us are in the same page, so we went to the component, did mount, and write a function to fetch the user from Firestore, the one from local, the user from local storage, checked it against the one which is authenticated, and if both have the same UID, found user and auth user, then it means yes, they are the same, they are valid, and then we just change the state valid user to true, and then when we are going to save it, we are checking that state. Obviously we should show a model, but in this case I will be happy with just this console log message. But if it is going to be a production project, you should show a model just to tell what happened to the user. And I think that's it for this video.